Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. When asked today to tell the truth about the federal response to the pandemic, Dr. Anthony Fauci said this.
We've got to almost reset this and say, okay, let's stop this nonsense and figure out how can we get our control over this now.
Reset, reboot. Let's stop this nonsense. The nonsense, of course, although it's always hard to know, is the constant sprays of disinformation and attacks directed at the public and also at him by the people he works for as he tries to do his job. But here's the problem. The nonsense is the point. That is what the Trump administration has. Nonsense is the goal. Nonsense is the approach. Nonsense is not an accident to them. Nonsense is what they do. Dr. Fauci is trying to do his job to beat back the virus. Donald Trump and his administration are trying to confuse people. They just have different goals. The specific nonsense in this case is Peter Navarro, a senior trade official who is, I gotta say, widely viewed in the entire economics field as a total crank. Yesterday, he published a brief, flimsy, sad 270-word takedown of Dr. Fauci in a national newspaper. The LA Times reports he had Trump's permission to write the column. Quote, not only was he authorized by Trump, he was encouraged. This is just a few days after the White House circulated opposition research on Dr. Fauci, pointing out that, like so many experts, he had been wrong at times during the pandemic. And this comes just a day after the president managed to give one of his most unhinged, distracting, really almost upsetting, hard to watch, confused rants about nothing. But here's the thing. People do know who Donald Trump is, by and large. People know who Dr. Fauci is. I mean, Dr. Fauci has been working in public health for over 50 years. He has served under 6 presidents, starting with Ronald Reagan. And he is arguably most known for his work on the AIDS epidemic in the 1980s. In fact, AIDS activist Larry Kramer, the only true and great hero among government officials in the AIDS crisis. 5 years ago, when Anthony Fauci was 74 years old, he suited up to battle the Ebola virus himself because he wanted to show his staff that he wouldn't ask them to do anything he wouldn't do himself. So that's who Dr. Anthony Fauci is. He's trying to do his job to beat the virus. He's very clear. He's been doing this for decades, right? Beating back infectious diseases. Today, he was asked if he still wants to work with this administration, with these people, these weirdos who write op-eds about you, and if he has thought about resigning. And he said, quote, no, I think the problem is too important for me to get into those kinds of thoughts and discussions. I just want to do my job. I'm really good at it. I think I can contribute, and I'm going to keep doing it. But it's not just Dr. Fauci they're attacking. It seems that Donald Trump, since he can't get a handle on the virus, there's now a kind of total disinformation campaign about who to blame. Here's an example. Dr. Robert Redfield, he's the person who runs the CDC, which is supposed to be the scientific authority on the disease. He is out spouting completely unsupported, weird sectional conspiracy theories, blaming Northerners invading the South with their coronavirus. And this is the kind of thing we were getting from the Trump administration as thousands more Americans get sick every day, tens of thousands more every day. This is what they have. Here's another. The president has been publicly telling us in broad daylight, in front of microphones, he wants to cover up the scope of the pandemic. He keeps telling us he does not like testing because it shows there are cases and that makes him look bad, so he doesn't want testing. He's just telling this all the time, like almost compulsively. He told us all that he instructed his people to slow the testing down. And then when he was asked if it was a joke, he stood by the claim. Well, now the Trump administration is actually trying to wrench the coronavirus data away from the CDC, where it's been for decades, and put it under the Department of Health and Human Services. Do you know who the communications person for HHS is? The person who handles communications for that entity, now tasked at the top of the reporting chain on coronavirus? It's Roger Stone's buddy, Michael Caputo, who had to delete his racist tweets about the coronavirus when he took the job. Do you want Roger Stone's buddy to be the conduit for the nation's pandemic information? Well, that's where we are. Of course, we were always heading to this point. You know, all the way back on May 4th, NYU professor Jay Rosen wrote this prophetic piece that I keep thinking about of what we were witnessing. And he wrote this: the plan is to have no plan, to let daily deaths between 1 and 3,000 become a normal thing, and then to create massive confusion about who is responsible. by telling the governors they're in charge without doing what only the federal government can do, by fighting with the press when it shows up to be briefed, by fixing blame for the virus on China or some other foreign element, and by flooding the zone with S-word. Steve Bannon's phrase for overwhelming the system with disinformation, distraction, and denial, which boosts what economists call search costs for reliable intelligence. Stated another way, the plan is to default on public problem solving and then prevent the public from understanding the consequences of that default. It was May 4th. Nailed it. Everything is played out exactly like that. There is no plan to stop the virus. There is just an attempt to confuse people and cover up the information and attack people like Dr. Fauci. But a strong majority of Americans do actually know. They are seeing through the disinformation. And just like Dr. Fauci, they are fed up with the nonsense. Pretty remarkable new poll today from Quinnipiac. And it shows registered voters back Joe Biden over Donald Trump 52 to 37%. But it doesn't stop there. When it comes to handling a crisis, Biden leads 57 to 38%. On handling healthcare, Biden leads 58 to 35%. On the coronavirus response, Biden is up 59 to 35%. 35% of Americans favor the president's response. Americans are fully aware that while experts like Dr. Fauci are trying to fight the virus, Donald Trump and his minions are trying to fight reality.